Play the intro.
Are you ready to get casual?
Do it.
Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant and join us for our roundtable
Do it.
TTRPG discussion. Oh yeah, it's time for Casual Friday. And now, here are your hosts.
Woo! We're here. It's Friday. Let's do this thing.
Woo. What's up, everybody? It is Casual Friday. StreamYard's being weird. Maybe because Daddy's not home. The children are in charge. Jim has made a Fey bargain and is in Muncie. But we figured out how to get an internet connection, but the bandwidth isn't very strong. So he might appear in chat, but we couldn't get the full stream going. Man, do we have a lot of news. I love doing this show. I love hanging out with you guys. I'm not always excited about the news that we cover. That is not the case today. We've got Arthas and Authus and Darkstone, World of Warcraft, Greyhawk, Dragonlance, Dritz, Tasha, Darth Vader.
Yeah, D&D is for everyone. That's their new unofficial tagline. Yeah.
Yes, and at the same time, no longer rated E for everyone, which I'm particularly excited about.
Right.
Before we spend the entirety of this episode talking about D&D goodness, which I am excited to do, in the interest of not devoting the entire episode to that, let's talk about some other stuff making waves at GenCon and otherwise. Broken Empires RPG kickstarted very successfully a little while ago, about to deliver towards the end of the year. You can still pre-order at Kickstarter rates, to my understanding, and that may change soon. So yeah, Trevor Duvall, Me, Myself, and Die fame. I don't know too much, honestly, about the solo RPG world, but what I do know, he's the cornerstone of my understanding.
Yeah.
And this system sounds dope. There's some cool mechanics in here.
Yeah, so he's a voice actor of some notable fame. And during the pandemic, I think, is when I don't know if he started during the pandemic or if his channel just blew up because of the pandemic. But he's a talented guy and very entertaining to watch. And he started playing solo RPGs during lockdown, and has had some real success on his YouTube channel in addition to his voice acting career. And now he's got his own game, which is heavily inspired by the old first and second edition Warhammer Fantasy RPG. So it's a D100 system. It looks pretty cool. I'm excited for it. And I think it's kind of, the reason I wanted to put it on the show is because I think it's kind of fallen under the radar with all the other indie RPGs that have come out in the last 2 years, with, Shadow Dark and Nimble and so forth and so on, Vagabond. But this one offers something a little different, being a D100 system, skill-based system, with some interesting social mechanics, apparently. There's not one charisma stat because it's a skill-based system, so there's different ways to handle social encounters, apparently. Sounds pretty interesting. So it's not like, oh, I dumped charisma and therefore my character is just not good at social encounters. You have a whole variety of skills that you can use during social encounters. So depending on what your character is good at, there's different ways to roll the dice during those RPG moments. I mean, those roleplay moments, right?
And that's a stumbling block of a lot of systems, the social interplay. He is the TTRPG Spaces version of Robin Williams. he is a very entertaining fellow to listen to, mostly because he's doing the voices of a lot of my favorite, 1970s to 1990s comedians. But he's also very well versed in the systems, and he's calling out all of his inspirations, which is very nice to see. Someone's citing their bibliography.
Right.
And I don't know Harn other than a little bit of reading about the setting, Harn Master, but Delta Green. He's talking about a lot of Burning Wheel. There's a lot of cool games in there, and he's maybe cracked the code or stolen the secret formula for cracking the code of a roll under system. And I don't know if this is like a term of art or he just says it somewhere, but blackjack style, you want roll under. It's a D100 roll under, which is intuitively very interesting, but you also want to roll high. You want to get the closest without going over.
Right.
And that may be the thing that satisfies my stupid monkey brain of like, no, big number good, and the whatever logical, no, if I know if my skill is the DC, then I don't have to consult anything. I always know what my target is at any given moment. And he's rocking levels of success within that. So sounds super cool, even if you're the kind of person who's not necessarily looking for a new game so much as a dice system to pillage for your own fantasy heartbreaker. Maybe worth checking this one out.
What I think is interesting about that blackjack style, if you want to roll high but not over your skill, right, is that I think it like helps create that space in your brain for failing forward, right? Because like if your target number is 70 and you roll an 89, you've gone over, right? So you have failed because you rolled higher than you needed than you could. And I think that opens the brain space up for that fail forward because you're thinking, oh, I just tried too hard to do this thing, right? And that lends itself to, instead of like, oh, you rolled a 1, so your lockpicks broke. No, you rolled over your skill. You were trying too hard, and now you've jammed your lockpicks in the lock. The door is open, but now your lockpicks are stuck in the lock. What do you do? So, yeah, it's an interesting approach, the whole roll under, but still try to get as close as you can to your threshold.
Love it. What's up, everybody in chat? Rosa, I don't know what they stole from Tree and Monk because I was slow on the uptake there, but good person to steal from. Phil, what's up? The Price is Right style, says Mr. Welch. Yes. The old Bob Barker. That's Drew Carey's predecessor for you kids out there. All right, there's another system we're going to talk about real quick before we drown in D&D goodness. Dungeon Dwellers.
Yeah, so this is Reaper miniatures. So any of you who have used miniatures in your game are probably familiar with Reaper miniatures because they are the go-to website for affordable miniatures. They've done tons of Kickstarters with their Bones series. For those of you who don't know, their miniatures used to be made of white plastic, so they called their Kickstarters, Bones 1, Bones 2, so forth and so on. And it was an even cheaper way to get their miniatures because when you back the Kickstarter, it was you're at a discounted rate for all this stuff. But then you'd have this huge pile of unpainted miniatures, aka the pile of shame for those of us who play war games and collect miniatures. But yeah, so they've made their own role-playing game, very OSR inspired, but they promise to deliver on more modern mechanics. So that the old school feel, kind of like they're shooting for that Shadow Dark target, right? The old school feel, but smooth modern mechanics. They have an interesting initiative system. We don't have time to go into right now, but it involves choosing your action before you roll initiative, and it also incorporates the type of weapon you're using. So it sounds like there might be a little bit of a learning curve to their initiative system, but they promise once you master it, it actually adds tactics to the game without having to add a lot of additional tactical pieces to the character sheet. So an interesting take on trying to not just find an easier way to do initiative, but find a way to do initiative that actually enhances gameplay versus detracts from it. That was my biggest takeaway.
Initiative feels like the white whale in some places where it's like, how can we capture the chaotic frenzy of a battle to the death, be it a 1v1 or like a medieval style military campaign, but not yell at each other and like take turns, do it in a very civilized way where I'm also eating Doritos. It's a very hard needle to thread. So I'm always interested in new ways to do that. We're all familiar with D&D's answer to that, which is roll dice. Why is initiative difficult? I think because it's two things at once. But a lot of us, especially a lot of these folks in chat, I'm sure have their favorite solutions to that. I'm always stress testing one or the other. Hey everybody, there's this little party down. I want to say it's in Wisconsin every time, but it's not. It's in Indianapolis now. At Outcrew, its hometown. GenCon is happening. Last night, the keynote address was a doozy. A triumphant return of Wizards of the Coast to GenCon. I am sure all the people who are complaining that they haven't been showing up to GenCon for the last few years are complaining about how they're showing up this year. Everyone loves to hate stuff, but like I'm feeling pretty cool about all of this stuff. We'll go through beat by beat, but how do you feel waking up this morning to all of this D&D goodness?
Yeah, well, a little inside baseball for those of you who are watching. Kind of how the soup is made, right? We were talking on Thursday, early on Thursday. Like, there's not going to be much news to talk about because it's too soon. Like, we're not going to get much out of Gen Con on the first day. We were thinking we were going to have to come up with some interesting stuff for the show. And most of those things that we were discussing got bumped because, like, within an hour after our Discord discussion, this keynote dropped, and it chock full of crazy D&D news. And hopefully, dare I say, D&D goodness? Like, is D&D back?
D&D might be back. I have been hemming and hawing and like tiptoeing out onto this ledge for the last, I don't even know, year or so, saying, look, there's a bunch of new people in there. We haven't really seen the fruits of their labor. They have the deck stacked against them. They are digging themselves out of a hole left not by their predecessors, but the people their predecessors worked for, and their predecessors probably checked out for a while because of all that mental strain of all the OGL nonsense and everything that came after it. So we are only just now seeing what 5.5 is about with the new guard. The face of which is Dan Ayuk. Dan Ayuk was out there for a lot of it, acknowledged that it was a big deal that they were back and that they're going to be doing this every year and kind of saving up the keynote roadmap to be released at Gen Con. And I was prepared for like a new thing and like a teaser and like, oh my, I was exhausted by the end. I was just like, oh, notes and notes and notes and notes and notes and notes and notes. So good. And I think they did a good job in the sequence of events. Chat is exploding. I saw them bring out Joe Manganiello first. He's the creative. He's some CCO, Chief Creative Officer, I believe.
Yeah, Chief Creative Officer, yeah.
Of Dungeons and Dragons Icons, which I'm sure he had some say over the the font there. But he brings out not his little dog till the end, which I was sad about. But he brings out Luke Gygax. We all know we're getting the world of Greyhawk, so that's exciting. And then Hickman, and then R.A. Salvatore, and he's just like dropping a history lesson, implying that there's more Dragonlance and some sort of Drist thing coming. R.A. Salvatore was not interested in reading the teleprompter, so I was a little confused about that part. But how did you feel about the Joe Manganiello early segment here?
Yeah, Amorosa in the chat is saying, the vibe was kind of off, and they felt like Wizards of the Coast was kind of catering to problematic players. I didn't get that feeling, but I definitely got the impression that they were trying to get the older players back. They're saying that D&D is for everyone, and they're bringing out Luke Gygax and talking about how instrumental Gary Gygax was to the hobby. I don't know that was necessarily like trying to apologize to players that kind of took some things the wrong way, but I think they were trying to mend some fences, I think is more more appropriate. The idea that they know that a lot of older players have been put off. Maybe they've been put off by their own bias and by their own assumptions, right? But they've been put off, and WotC wants them back. And so I don't think it's a bad idea, and we've talked about this before, the idea of like, can we have different versions of Dungeons and Dragons? Can we have like official products that actually create different styles of play? Now, when you and I have talked about it with Jim, we talked about the idea of like rules light versions and like mechanical shifts that could, incorporate travel rules or social rules, like using the renown system and stuff like that. We talked about like making D&D for everyone from a game design standpoint, right? Making different versions of D&D and making D&D more compartmentalized so you can add and subtract to the mechanics you want for your style of play. They don't seem to be going that route. Instead, they're going the route of like, how many campaign settings can we create? And can we create enough campaign settings for both the old school players and the newcomers? And I mean, it's not a bad approach.
It's not. There is a level of oversaturation. You get back to like, there's 100 versions of the games and we're supporting none of them, and we collapse under the weight of it all. But Hasbro is a different level than TSR. In a sense, Icons is the thing you compare to TSR now. So if there's a division of Hasbro who's like, we're making old school games, does that slowly, divergent evolution from a more family friendly, cozy version of the game that's Technicolor, and this just gets harder and harder in the whatever metal edge sense of the word? Yes. Maybe. And that's, I don't foresee that as a bad thing. Some putting a little edge to it is a step in the direction of the edge lord weirdness that a lot of us don't want at our tables. But like, if that's your main fear, as some in the comments are saying, maybe it's good to have them siloed. But I don't want jerks to ruin my good time, right? Like you want to jerk proof your game, but at the same time, you don't want to overly jerk proof your game where you have sanded off the edges. Sometimes I want to play a very social, chill, cozy Farmville simulator style game, and sometimes I want to crack skulls. And it's nice to have both options going. So yeah, I'm excited for Greyhawk. I've been excited for Greyhawk since they said it was going to be in the DMG, because I just want new cool stuff. I don't know. I like R.A. Salvatore. I read a bunch of Drist, and we'll read more if they're coming out with stuff. I have no idea what they were really talking about. What do you got?
Mr. Welsh points out that back in the TSR days, they had 9 different settings. By my count, based on everything we know so far, we're looking at 11 different settings. We can get into that once we run through everything. I'll do a recap. 11 different settings. And the way they're doing it is they're using third-party creators, right? So they're bringing in other people, which is very like 3rd edition, 3.5 edition. They're contracting out certain campaign settings to other companies. So they're using these third-party companies. They're bringing the third-party companies back into the fold, right? Cobalt Press is one of those companies. Cobalt Press, the Black Flag, the Rebellion, right? They were at the forefront of the OGL debacle saying, we are not going to play Wizards of the Coast games anymore. We're making our own game. They're now back. They're going to be making a product for 5.5.
They are going to be making a Forgotten Realms product for 5.5, maybe carrying the torch of Forgotten Realms, which, to go from, there was one setting, and then once in a while they'd link, you get a book of, okay, here's Eberron, right? Exciting. But like, it was Forgotten Realms for a decade. And say love it or hate it. Like, you know, chocolate cake's your favorite thing. You don't want to eat it every day for a decade, folks. Give me some variety. So the idea that, like, okay, we're not letting go of anything. We're actually leaning into and preserving historically whatever. And I don't know if this is under Icons or just under Joe or what. It was hard to. I don't really care about what the org chart is doing, but I believe as we speak, there's an actual play, maybe still continuing, of Joe's metal as hell homebrew setting. Not only can you buy the T-shirt now, you can go play in death saves. Brad, you did a little lore dump before we got started here. What can you tell us about this new sick setting?
Yeah, so I tuned in to the live play and watched, you know, the first 15, 20 minutes of it so that I could understand what this is going to be. And it's an officially licensed D&D product by Joe Manganiello and I'm drawing a blank. The 4th edition, 5th edition, Mike Merles. Mike Merles and Joe Manganiello have collaborated on a D&D setting that's effectively like a What If comic book, right? It's an Elseworld setting. So they take the planes of Dungeons and Dragons, and it's what if the demons won the Blood War. So the premise is the demons have defeated the devils, and the demons descend on Sigil in order to take over the hub of the planescape and rule everything. And the dying act of the Lady of Pain was to destroy as many demons as she could and destroy the outer planes so the demons can never rule again. The result, though, is that everything comes crashing down into just one world. One world totally decimated by war. So the fall, like whatever demons survive the Lady of Pain's massive spell that she casts as she sacrifices her life to prevent the demons from taking over Sigil, whatever demons have survived are now on this last remaining one material plane. And it's, who knows? Who knows who survived all that chaos? Who knows who survived that calamity? But it's a world ravaged by devastation and war, full of what remains of the demons and whatever else you want to throw in there in your chaotic heavy metal, you know, collaborative role-playing game.
I mean, sounds pretty cool to me. You know, I don't know. I am also I need to work out more, but I'm also a dude from Pittsburgh with a tiny dog, so he has a place in my heart. But that sounds dope. I mean, I am all for sort of a collapsing of options as much as an expansion sometimes, where it's like, yeah, all of this stuff that you know, it's shot. There's versions of it, but it bad. And we'll talk about Dark Sun in a second. The belle of the ball, depending on who you ask. One of the major highlights. But they kind of shoved this in, which was strange.
It was just a brief mention at the end of Icon. So I caught it, and I was like, uh-oh, I need to know more about that. And I started digging around, and I couldn't find anything last night about it. Other than that article that came out a few days ago that didn't say much. But Joe said they were going to play it tomorrow, right? Which is now today. And so I figured there'd be a live play, and sure enough, there was. And I got the answers around, like, I don't know, was it like noon today when they started playing? Noon or 1 today when they started playing. So yeah, it sounds like a cool setting. And, you know, Mike Merles has tweaked some of the rules. Apparently to make it a little more lethal, a little more crazy, a little more chaos. You know, and, you know, Joe, of course, Joe's always on the bandwagon of, like, I miss the 80s when we were the bad guys. When D&D was under the witch hunt of the, what did he call them? The religious right, when the religious right was coming after D&D, and none of that was true. It was actually a group of kids with problems who are actually working out their problems by getting together and playing D&D, as opposed, and that got sold as D&D is causing kids problems. And he's like, I missed that. It wasn't true, but I kind of liked the camaraderie and the vibe it gave that we were doing something wrong, right? And that's just Joe's personality. He's heavy metal as hell, and yeah, so that's going to be reflected in this new campaign setting, Death Saves, the Blood War.
I see the appeal. There were points where I was the kid in the back of the bus, but a lot of us maybe we're on the straight and narrow, maybe not. Anyway, Crown of the Witch Queen also looks. Another thing I don't know too much about. It seems like it's the companion piece to Melf's guide to Greyhawk. It seems like maybe we're going to get a setting and an adventure for each of these seasons, and that's cool. I'm for it if that's the pattern we're hitting now. So
right, and apparently
we talked about this a tiny bit. Oh, go.
Apparently the bad guy, who could potentially be 5.5's big bad, right? Like 5th edition. Early on was all about Strahd being the big bad and then Vecna being the big bad, right? So it seems like there might be setting up like Greyhawk's big bad to be Tasha's daughter, who's like a vampire witch. She's a witch like her mom, but she's also a vampire. So so it's kind of a mashup. A little bit of Strahd, a little bit of Vecna slammed into this daughter of Tasha. And she's not a new character. She's been part of D&D lore forever. But yeah, that seems to be the main bad guy for this adventure. And yeah, I think it's going to be the companion to Luke Gygax's new Greyhawk book. So you get a campaign and a setting for Greyhawk. Again, giving those vibes that D&D wants to be back in a big way and relating to as many fans as they can. I don't hate it.
I don't hate it, and we'll. There was a lot of Tasha talk, and this was one of them. But I did get the feeling that either her daughter, whose name I am like hesitant to pronounce in a recording, or Tasha is being like elevated, set up. We'll see if they stick the landing. I've made my opinions about the Vecna campaign known, and they're not unique. So we'll see. I can see an impulse to grasp some sort of connecting thread through everything as this diversity of settings is upon us. But forget all that. Ladies and gentlemen, landlocked warlocks in the world, unite. Dark Sun confirmed. We're doing it. I knew this. I felt like this was coming. It was clearly like the point, and there's a little disclaimer. And I was like, they're doing a trigger warning. They're like trying to, and then I was like, oh damn! Like, I'm not going to play this video because it would change the ratings. It would change the way this channel interacts with YouTube. They're going hard. They're not pulling punches. Good. It was the opening Mortal Kombat full fatality, and yeah, I'm all for brave creative acts, whether or not this is going to hit my table or not. They're swinging at the pitch, man. What is your experience with Dark Sun? Are you ready to go back? Are you afraid of what it's going to do to the hobby? How are you feeling about all this?
My hope, and this is like me, I'm a pretty positive guy. Like we report a lot on WotC stepping on rakes, and I'm always a little disappointed with Wizards of the Coast, if not sometimes a lot disappointed with Wizards of the Coast. But I'm hopeful. There's a whole new line of creators working on all this stuff, and they seemed really delighted to share that the lawyers said it had to have a label and it had to be shrink wrapped so kids couldn't open it. Like, we're going hard R. Like, blood, guts, gore, nudity, full hard R rating. And as far as my experience with Dark Sun, we dabbled in it when I was coming up. I was in high school, like junior, senior year, I think was when we dabbled with Dark Sun. My group was like hardcore into Dragonlance. I've talked about that before. We played what amounted to like a 6-year campaign in Dragonlance. We started like sophomore year of high school, and we didn't finish until after we had graduated college. So, and there were large gaps in between. So it wasn't like we were playing every week for 6 years. But it was very much, we were all about the Dragonlance. So we only dabbled with Dark Sun. We played a few, they weren't one-shots back then because, we were kids and we had time on our hands. But they were like 3 and 4 shots in Dark Sun just to play around with it. I've always loved the art. Of course, Brahm is one of the iconic fantasy artists, and they used a lot of his work for Dark Sun. There wasn't a whole lot of Dark Sun for 3rd edition. There were I want to say there were like Dragon Magazine articles that you could cobble together to play Dark Sun in 3rd edition. But it had a decent resurgence in 4th edition. 4th edition, Teos Abadia actually worked on 4th edition Dark Sun campaign setting that you can still get from his website. Like, he has special permission from WotC to get the Ages of Athos Dark Sun adventure. It was it wasn't called Adventure League back then. It was whatever the 4th edition version of Adventure League was. Teos Abadia and a few others wrote this long-standing, it's called Age of Ashes, I think. Age of Ashes campaign that's actually the longest campaign product written for Dark Sun. And it was for 4th edition Dark Sun, but you could totally download it and, run it today. Ashes of Athos, that's what it was called. Thanks. But yeah, there's a lot of cool art here. Some of it looks a little more sci-fi than I remember Dark Sun being. But so they're putting a little bigger spin on it. It looks like the city-states might be they seem a little bigger and a little more like Arcana tech than I remember the original Dark Sun being. I don't think that's a bad design choice. It lends itself to some really cool artwork here. But yeah, and they're coming out with a reskinned player's handbook. So they're going to release a limited edition player's handbook where they're replacing all the art with Dark Sun art, which is an interesting choice.
There's a lot of art in the PHB. I'm still a little unclear. That's how they said it. That's what I assumed at first. So we're getting 3 books, over 400 plus pages. I don't know if the PHB is part of that 400 plus, almost 500 page count, because the PHB is like 300 pages. So it's a very different sized product if we're getting 2 books that are 400 pages or we're getting 2 books that are 100 and something pages. I think it's the former. It almost has to be. And the PHB doesn't count towards the page count, but I don't know that. I'm also unclear. I don't think they're just slapping a collector's edition cover on the PHB. It sounds like they're replacing a lot of the art. I don't know if they're replacing all of the art. And if they do, I might buy it because there's some sick stuff going on here.
Yeah,
I'm not.
And they're going to add the Scion class. So there will be a psychic class, the Scion. I think that's going to be in the campaign book, though. So
Blood and Power has the Scion class. They're not changing the content of the PHB.
Now, I'm wondering, because there is a ton of art in the PHB, could they? This is just I don't see that it would be that hard if they replace some of the art, if they're replacing, all the art with Dark Sun art, could they just take a few of those panels and put in, instead of a piece of art, put in a sidebar that explains how this class relates to Athos, how this class relates to Dark Sun? Because every class in D&D has a full page piece of art. So what if on that page they had a half piece of art and a Dark Sun sidebar that explained what fighters are like in Athos, what sorcerers are like in Athos? My other question is, what are they going to do with clerics? Because there are no divine classes, and the PHB also has what are they called? What are the angel player species?
Aasimar, yeah.
Aasimar,
yeah.
right? There's no divine species. There's no divine classes in Dark Sun. So I'm curious, are they? I don't. From everything I've heard, they're not going to actually change the content of the player's handbook. But I'm guessing in the campaign setting, they're going to explain what to do with clerics and what to do with Aasimar, because those are in the player's handbook.
Yes, I think I'm not sure. I still haven't dug my teeth into Age of Arcana yet, but we're looking at a adventure guide and a setting guide, and I'm not sure which has more of the rules in it, and if it's player or GM, but they've got to lay out restrictions, because magic works differently, races work differently. I'm sorry, species work differently. Divinity works differently. I think out of the gate, there's going to be, this is what you're bringing in from the PHB. This is how you're adopting it. Is a lot of that work going to be in the Dark Sun version of the PHB? I don't know. I'm interested to see that. Is it just like a reskin where they've gone through and done each class's one page of the big hero piece? Are they doing every subclass? I can't see them doing every magic item and the how to play tutorial in the beginning. That's a whole different art style. The black and white sketches. Cool if they are, but I think that's a part of it that I like that it's coming. I'm the least interested in that. I want to see a setting and rule guide where it's like, yeah, you can do magic, but there's a cost. Also, everyone hates you. That's cool. I'm not here for that dude's head is exploding off his body because of some psionic power. That's cool. Also, I am interested in a version of D&D that plays different. And the fact that they're doing Dark Sun and they're doing it hard means that we're going to get things like that in the future, right? Like, you want the opposite of Dark Sun. You want the coziest version of the game ever. You want Dark Sun to succeed so you can have a version of the game that isn't based on murder. whatever setting you're in, most of the buttons on your character sheet equal hurt somebody till they die. So the more modules, and that's not the right word anymore because that means adventure, but the more systems that can be added or subtracted, the better in my mind. And there's a lot of addition in this ecosystem. And refinement and editing down is what we need, and it's pivotal for Dark Sun to be a success, for those features to be implemented. And if it's implemented well and received well, one, all the people you don't want to play with, they're going to go play Dark Sun. Cool. Two, your version of D&D might look a lot better because of the lessons they've learned creating this. And maybe that's a little pie in the sky, but I think also we're seeing them take a chance and be risky and do something cool and new and exciting. As much as it's a nostalgic cash grab, it's also like a company that's been stepping on a lot of rakes and is afraid of controversy, is doing some big creative stuff that is taking on some risk. Let's put it that way.
Right, for sure. And the other thing that I caught, like just one sentence that they threw out there, is that Dark Sun's about battling tyranny. And that kind of hits home to our recent world that we live in, like current world events, the idea of fighting against tyranny, and that's kind of a way to sell Dark Sun to your audience that would otherwise be kind of against a lot of the things that exist in Athos, right? And that's the thing, is you can have adult content, you can have like horrible things in your campaign setting, without having to have your players play horrible characters, right? Like, you could still be heroes in Athos. It's a grim, dark setting. Your heroes aren't going to dramatically change the world, but they might save a few people. They might change the lives of a small group, and that could be the theme of your campaign. Is kind of like Mad Max Fury Road, right? We've got a handful of people. Can we save this handful of people and make this one spot on the map a better place, right? The rest of the world is still going to be shit, but can we at least make this one place on the map a better place and save this handful of people and take out this really one bad guy and make this one village in the middle of this desert a decent place to live, right? And that's a story you could tell with Dark Sun, where your players could still be the good guys, right? So, for anybody out there who's like, are we inviting problematic players to our tables by running Dark Sun? You don't have to do that. You don't have to. You can have that conversation. I mean, ideally, if we're playing Dark Sun, we're all adults in the room. You can have a real conversation about, we've got some nasty themes in this setting. The idea, though, is that you guys are trying to stop these bad things from happening. You're not perpetrating these bad things on other people. Like, I don't want to role play that.
Right, straight up. And you're still talking about having a session 0, refining it down, setting your own boundaries as a dungeon master. You can be as woke or as not as you want with all of that. But like, I don't want to role play an NPC that's being tortured to death repeatedly every Tuesday night. Like, that's not my vibe. That's not what I'm in it for.
Right.
Maybe that's you. Whatever. Cool, I guess. But like, it's like this very simplistic form of criticism that confuses like the portrayal of a thing with the like elevation and acceptance of a thing.
Right.
Not the same. Just because there's a bad guy in the movie and doesn't mean that the writer and director are advocating for their positions.
Right.
Okay. Same thing goes for a dungeon master in a campaign or whatever, an adventure writer in a thing like this. It's there so you can smash it. And, in a world where great inequity and fighting over water and power, maybe it's not as fantastical as it seems. Maybe it's some sort of metaphor. Okay, it's not just for grognards, though. We had a good... We're 45 minutes into this. We're less than halfway. Oh, my God. So much news. Hey, guys. LFG on D&D Beyond, and also a lot of improvements, like site search. I've been saying it for a while. They keep saying the right things. And you know what? I'm willing to see if it works, because I have a lot of complaints about D&D Beyond. I get sad when someone pulls out the laptop at the physical game night, because I'm like, oh, I gotta be flipping through a lot of stuff to find what you want. They want to make it better. I would love it to be better. So cool. Also, you can go find your friendly local neighborhood game shop on D&D Beyond if they sign up. Cool. Great. No notes.
Yeah, site search is definitely the biggest problem with D&D Beyond. The other thing they promise is a new mobile version, because that's the second biggest problem with D&D Beyond. And they specifically said they want a mobile version that doesn't distract you from the game when you're playing in person. If they can pull that off, I will be impressed. I've been very critical of D&D Beyond. It's my least favorite part of 5th edition. And I would love to see them come up with a mobile app that is actually streamlined and usable, and doesn't take time away from the play experience like the current one does. and they're going to play test it. They're going to put it out, and I guess they didn't call it a beta format, but they said they're going to put it out for everybody to try, and they're going to solicit feedback and tweak the app as they go. And from the mock-ups they had, it looks kind of video gamey, which makes sense, right? Like, what D&D Beyond now creates a character sheet, right? But character sheets are not ideal for your phone, right? So trying to simulate a character sheet on a mobile device, I think, is part of the problem. So if you made it more like a video game, because video games have been doing menu screens and interacts from one menu to the next for a long time. If you made it a little more gamified and made it feel smoother because you're drawing from video game menu design versus trying to recreate a character sheet on a screen this big, right? I think it could be good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't realize until you were saying that, but I do think they fell into the trap of like the worst of both worlds, where like they're trying to recreate a character sheet, and like, again, I'd much rather you have a character sheet most of the time. But if you're going to have a digital thing, like, we've learned a lot about digital UIs in the time since the first character sheets were mimeographed. I don't even know, like, whatever. There's a lot of technological advancement that we could be using here. I don't need or necessarily want, fireworks when I roll a nat 20 or something, but I do think you put the right people with the software background into building a mobile app that gets out of the way.
Right.
Would be great because my campaign to get people to stop using D&D Beyond in person has failed. I give up.
Yeah, like, give me the people who made Monopoly Go. Like, that's a dumbass game. The game plays itself. You don't have to do a damn thing to play that game. The game just cycles through a series of patterns, and you're not even really making any real decisions. But put those people on D&D Beyond mobile app, because that's where you need the app to just do shit for you and get you where you need to be on your character sheet, right? That would be great.
Warlock is a video game. They're making it. It looks cool. The big reveal was that Tasha is your patron, and she's an archfey. Is Tasha an archfey? I mean, I see how you get there, but I don't know about that. The other big thing, here we are, 48 minutes into it. Big thing number 2 of 3, in my estimation. Again, there's so many big things here. Someone's psyched about Dragonlance and is running around in circles. And his name is Nacho. He just woke up. But everyone, there's something for everyone here. And I think this is a thing for a lot of people, and maybe a lot of people who haven't joined us yet. The Season of Champions, the next thing that's happening calendar wise. Let's go back here. The Season of Champions has been blank, and it's the thing coming up after the book in September that's about to come out. We just found out it's World of Warcraft, which there was a leak last week, and I was like, I guess that's real, but it seems unlikely that Blizzard would be partnering with WotC. Here comes the CEO of Blizzard, and we are doing a full Azeroth treatment, and I'm pumped. Did you ever play WoW? I rolled a level 80 mage back in the day. That's a long time ago.
I've never played WoW. I had several friends that were really big into WoW, so I kind of absorbed a lot through osmosis just by hanging out with them. But there was a third-party product. I don't know how they got both licensed, but there was a third-party product back in 3.5 that did a WoW version of D&D. And I played a Night Elf Druid, and we ran that for a little while. The biggest problem I had with that version is that most of the species that came from WoW had level adjustments. I don't know if you remember level adjustments, but basically if you picked a certain species, like back then, if you played a Dragonborn back in 3.5, if I remember right, you started the game counting as if you were second level. even though you were first level, because your racial abilities gave you enough powerful things to do that you counted as a second level creature. That never really worked for me because you had the hit points of a first level character, because your class was still first level, even though you counted as second level because you had a breath weapon or you had some cool night elf ability or that sort of thing. So I wasn't impressed with that 3.5 version of WoW, solely for that design choice that they made the WoW species. Most of them had a level adjustment that came with them.
I wonder if that's like trying to emulate like species. Classes are gatekept by species. So maybe that's how you get. Also, my knowledge of WoW is decades out of date. But I think this is potentially the best fit. We can read the tea leaves about the magification of WotC and how we're going to see every freaking IP come in. Like, maybe I'm not looking forward to that, but if there's one, and we already know there's two, but if something is going to be ported over to D&D, World of Warcraft makes the most sense. There is so much common DNA here between just like Tolkien's fantasy baseline, and there's a lot of D&D in Warcraft, and then, like it or not, there's a lot of Warcraft DNA ported back into D&D.
Right.
I mean, WoW exploded. 4th edition tried to emulate a lot of what WoW was doing. It didn't succeed because it was a pen and paper game and not a video game, but a lot of the things that you probably like in 5th edition that grognards mumble about come from World of Warcraft. Like, you like cantrips, you like always on abilities, you like a lot of these like easier, more gameable things that make your character more survivable and interesting and have more buttons to push. That's all WoW. And now you're bringing in a bunch of other species and classes. Let's go to the breakdown of what's in it. But they're saying they're porting over everything. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of reskinning involved, but we're getting 16 species, if that's your jam. And there's some cool ones in there. This might be the best version of a werewolf you're going to get, among a lot of other things. 6 new subclasses, 13 class skins. There are a couple interesting classes in World of Warcraft that are not represented well in D&D 5e, and there are a couple that are represented better. Like, your favorite ranger might be in this book, guys. A shaman buff caster. Looks like they're making a barbarian into it, but shamans are a very interesting, like, bard-like class with totems in WoW. Again, at least in WoW back in the day. Yeah, man, you want to roll up Kung Fu Panda? I was out before Pandaren was in, but like, yeah, you want to be a drunken monk? It's back. Magic items, some dope dungeons. I've run through some of them, so we're getting some crazy good maps. We're getting, I want to say 50 monsters and 30 boss monsters. So if nothing else, you're pure GM, you don't care about player options, like, we might get some sick bestiary components out of this. There are some brilliant game design dungeons and penultimate and then ultimate dungeon boss fights. So
yeah, remember
just some cool stuff.
Yeah, remember when the Theros campaign setting came out and they had the boss monsters that had like different levels to them? So like, as you fought the boss monster, it would morph into like the next like form or whatever. Kind of anime, very WoW. I would like to see more of that design, because that type of design that they use for Theros for their big boss monsters would really fit the design of the WoW boss monsters, right?
The idea of like legendary 2-phase boss fights, like 30 of those. Yes, please. I'm buying this book because of that. Sight unseen.
Yeah, so that could be interesting. And again, this is, this is their new pledge. D&D is for everyone, right? They're trying to market this to all fans, right? So, we talked about the Grognard stuff, Dragonlance, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, right? That's targeting my generation. That's targeting Gen X, right? Because my generation grew up on that stuff. This really targets the older millennials, right? Because it's the older millennials that really grew up on World of Warcraft, right? So yeah, I mean they're thinking through this, right?
Yes.
They know that a lot of older gamers have moved on to other RPGs, and they want them back. So WoW attracts your older millennials. The icons is attracting your Gen X gamers. They're trying. They're trying. I don't know how successful this is going to be, but they're bringing in a lot of people to make it happen, right?
They're working with Blizzard to do it, and like, there is someone in your life, dear viewer, who has never played D&D, but has played Warcraft. Maybe they haven't played in 10, 15 years, but like, this is a very short bridge to walk over, especially now when you can be like, hey, you can roll up your character from World of Warcraft into D&D Beyond, and I'll tell you, in most cases, it's going to make more sense than an artificer riding a spider tank in a lot of your home games. Like, it's not very different. Huge, elaborate, wikis worth of lore, sure, but it looks and feels like D&D in so many ways that, like, I think as a addition, I'm not going to be mad about it when someone rolls up with like, oh, can I use this World of Warcraft spell? Odds are, yes, probably. It's going to feel like D&D still. Maybe it's OP. We'll see. I don't know. But like, I think I'm hoping a lot of people ride WoW nostalgia into D&D currently. And all you dungeon masters out there, you might be able to capitalize on that. There might be people who have never played D&D before in your circle who know and love WoW and would leap at the chance to get that little bit of that magic back, get that feeling back.
We got a question in chat, Ryan. It's a perfect setup for our transition. Are we ready to shift from WoW?
Sure.
All right. So the question is, will Universes Beyond work as well for D&D as it did for Magic the Gathering? And I don't know if that question is like financially driven, like, is it going to be that profitable? Or is the question to like the fact that the other universes being brought into Magic the Gathering seem to really upset a lot of the diehard Magic the Gathering fans? My take on that is hopefully it works as, for them financially. So, again, I would rather have them make more good products to monetize D&D than to monetize D&D by all those things we fear that they would do, right? So hopefully it's profitable. Secondly, game-wise, I think what's different about Universes Beyond for D&D is if I say, let's play Dark Sun, we're playing Dark Sun. If I say, let's play, Power Rangers, because that's going to be an option soon, we're playing Power Rangers. We're not trying to put Power Rangers and Dark Sun and Eberron and Dragonlance all into the same card game, right? What's unique about D&D is when you pick a setting, that setting sets the tone, right? That setting says, we're playing WoW. These are the new classes and species you can choose from. Enjoy something new and different. We're not trying to shoehorn WoW species and classes into Forgotten Realms or into Dark Sun, right? So I think D&D is better set up to handle a Universes Beyond approach because, like I said, you choose your setting when you start to play your campaign. So I think that's going to be a good thing. For those of you who are saying, what the hell is Universes Beyond? Ryan, you want to fill us in?
Sure. Yeah, it's a loaded question, and I am not the Magic the Gathering authority, but when it works, it's not actually talked about so much as the program, but like Forgotten Realms or whatever the edition is, Final Fantasy. There's a lot of very successful ones, and then there's a lot of IPs that have been shoehorned in to Magic the Gathering that like there's a big culture clash involved, and like Doctor Who is a famous one. Vibrant nerd darling maybe doesn't belong in a Magic the Gathering game. So we'll see. I mean, it's a loaded question because it's 7 questions at once. I fear WotC applying the wrong lessons from Magic the Gathering. This might be wishful thinking and projection. I see an intelligent creative approaching the C-suite and packaging the cool shit they want to do as the successful money grabbing shit the other guys have done over there and getting stuff done. So, because like, okay, right now World of Warcraft is the one that we've talked about as far as Universes Beyond, and like, whoo, great fit. Never even crossed my mind that it would happen, but like, do you know how many times I've explained D&D in World of Warcraft terms to a new player who's around my age? A lot. So it makes sense. The next thing that they talked about within Universes Beyond, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but these other third-party people making existing, Dungeons and Dragons IP, but now Ravenloft is going to Ghostfire Games. Eberron is staying with Visionary. And Forgotten Realms is going to be stewarded by Cobalt Press, at least for the next book that's coming out in the next year or two. This is what we're looking at, and this is under that program. So, like, this is cool for me. I am seeing these third-party people get elevated. If you demonize WotC, okay, maybe this is a bad thing, but I think this is innately good for Cobalt Press to be selling more books, to be feeding themselves. Same for Ghostfire Games. Keith is kind of in his own world. He's always been in this whatever halfway in, halfway out space. The only other piece of evidence we have for what Universes Beyond is going to look like is the far-flung end of our calendar, the horizon. We don't know much about it, but at the very end of the keynote address, we got Darth Vader, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't know how to feel about it. I'm a little punch drunk. I'm a little information overload by this point.
Yeah,
but honestly, yeah, Season of Rebellion, D&D, Star Wars, sus. For me, sus. That is as far as my optimism extends. I'm not excited about D&D Star Wars, but I don't know anything about it yet.
Well, I'll be curious to see if they are doing Star Wars themselves or if they are going to contract that out to a third-party creator. What gives me hope about using third-party creators, of course, Keith knows Eberron, so him doing his own Eberron books makes sense, right? Ghostfire, they do dark fantasy well. So the fact that they have given Ghostfire the domains of dread, right? That makes sense, right? Use the third-party creator who's good at dark fantasy to write your next Domain of Dread book. Give Cobalt Press, who's great at kitchen sink fantasy, Forgotten Realms, right?
Yeah, Midgard is. You know what? I'm not even going to say that. Midgard is distinct and beautiful and folkloric in ways that Forgotten Realms is not. But it's a good fit.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So if and remember, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Renegade Games is converting their G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Power Rangers games to 5.5. So this is where I said in the beginning, when Mr. Welch brought up the TSR and the 9 different campaign settings, we're looking at like 11 campaign settings. We've got Death Saves the Blood War, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, WoW, Star Wars, Domains of Dread, Eberron, Forgotten Realms, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Power Rangers. All in 5.5. Potentially, we don't know about Renegade Games, the G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Power Rangers, right? We don't know if those are going to be on D&D Beyond, but it would make sense. So you're at
I hate it
least,
though.
yeah, you're at least going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different campaign settings that'll be available on D&D Beyond. Because WotC is doing Death Saves Blood War, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, WoW, and Star Wars. And then Ghostfire is doing Domain of Dread. Visionary Productions is doing Eberron. Colvin Press is doing Forgotten Realms. So we assume that at least those 8 are going to be on D&D Beyond. That's a pretty safe assumption. But then Renegade Games, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Power Rangers, if those are on D&D Beyond too, now you have 11 campaign settings. It could make D&D Beyond messy. That could be a problem. The flip side of that, though, is these are a whole variety of ways to get new players to play the game. Right?
Yes. Yes, there is this fundamental. I think it's an axiom that if D&D is doing well, it's good for the hobby, and the more pipelines leading into D&D, like everyone complaining that they should be playing their favorite game instead of D&D has decades of D&D under their belts, and it's easy for them to forget that. This is the top of the funnel. This is where people start. Your indie darling is only pulling from the people who have been playing D&D for a while. This is where it starts. So get that out of the way. My like pain point, there's more painful points in D&D Beyond that it sounds like they're addressing. But if we're going to go this way, which we clearly are based on the map, and I'm very excited about it. If D&D Beyond is not going to be, I can't ban it at my table, but like the reason I want to ban it at my table, there's a world where a dungeon master creates the campaign and creates the silo that campaign exists in, and it's easy and quick and foolproof. I'm having trouble keeping 2014 out of my 2024, let alone, I don't like, every new player shows up with some spell from some third-party thing that I've never heard of, and I have to decide if I'm going to be a permissive or a jerk. And I'm running a kitchen sink beer and pretzels game with the new players in it. So like if I'm trying to run Dark Sun or some bespoke like Greyhawk or Warcraft, make it very easy for me to turn things on and off decisively from the top down. That's something that the GM needs to be able to control. Can you port that, like when you go to join the campaign, checksum on the character sheet, does it have content from other sources that are not allowed in this campaign?
Right.
Maybe that's just me personally, but I think as we expand into all these different realms, I like all this variety. I don't want, you mix all the colors together, you get mud. Like I want them to really support dungeon masters creating bespoke experiences. They're doing a whole lot of tools to do that. We need a little bit of organizational principles underlying it for that to work in D&D Beyond. And it seems like that maybe that's not the priority because there's bigger fish to fry. But oh man, in that D&D Beyond column for the future, I really want to see that.
Yeah, as soon as you get site search fixed, then you need to have better toggles to turn things on and off. Absolutely. Otherwise, you're going to end up with somebody showing up to the table with a Power Rangers character and someone showing up with a Dark Sun character and someone showing up with a WoW character. And that's going to be a mess when you're trying to play in Star Wars.
Yes. And like you need that. I mean, ideally sooner rather than later, but like by the time you get to Star Wars. And again, Star Wars is the thing that I am the least excited about. Maybe the most impressed with or surprised by, right? Dark Sun and WoW, excited and surprised. Star Wars, man, I don't know. I mean, are we going to get good ship-to-ship space combat? It's just, it's space. It's science fantasy, not science fiction. Cool, yeah, like Jedi. You get psionics. You're pretty close to Jedi. There's a lot of. I can see how you get there, but like, ooh, they got a lot to do in the next year and a few months to make me believe Star Wars is going to be any good at all.
Well, and again, that's why they're bringing in third-party creators, right? They're, because WotC is going to be focused on Death Saves, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, WoW, and Star Wars. We presume Star Wars. We don't know. We don't know if Star Wars is going to be made by a third creator, but WotC is going to be focused at least on those 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're bringing in Ghostfire, Visionary, and Cobalt to do the Domains of Dread, Eberron, and Forgotten Realms. So they've got third-party creators continuing to create for settings that they already have firmly established, and they are focused on creating the new settings. That seems to be a pretty good formula to create a whole bunch of content without putting too much stress on the core designers, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Star Wars is done by a company that's already done Star Wars, just like Renegade, who already did G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Power Rangers, got the contract to make those 3 games for 5.5. They've already done those settings. Now they're just doing the 5.5 version. So could they go out and get one of the companies that has already done Star Wars games, because there's a whole bunch of them out there. There's a whole bunch of different versions of Star Wars, RPGs and skirmish games and video games. There's all sorts of companies that have had their fingerprints on Star Wars. Could they go out there and grab another third party to do the Star Wars books for them? And if they did that, that might be the more successful route to go.
And we know that it's roughly 2 years from start to finish for these books. So they're already well into it. So they may have contracted a lot of those people. Like, these games exist and were fairly well received. I don't know. Star Wars has its fans and its detractors. But yeah, maybe some of these people are working on it, and it could be a good thing. I will say, like, zooming out and looking at the roadmap as a pattern, if we're going to get this year over year for the conceivable future of 3 seasons, 2 of them big D&D, crowd pleasers, I'm happy to see a big Red Wizards of Thay adventure coming up, and then Dark Sun, and then Greyhawk. Like, sweet, thank you. If the third thing every year is this universes beyond, other IP coming in, like, I'm excited about WoW. I'm skeptical about Star Wars. If the third one in 2028 is like something completely out of left fields that applies to a demographic that I'm not a part of, that's still okay. I don't need 3 giant adventures and setting guides every year. I probably need 1. Probably going to buy 2. Having that third one appealing to someone else, like if it's My Little Pony 2028, like it's not for me, but I'm not going to be mad about it.
I was just about to say that's the no-brainer, right? Because My Little Pony is a Hasbro product. You can make a rules light version of Hasbro for kids. I mean, I feel like My Little Pony is the most obvious Worlds Beyond no-brainer, or Universes Beyond no-brainer for D&D. When my girls were younger, my 2 oldest girls were, much younger. They came to me and they're like, "Dad, you should watch My Little Pony with us. It's very much like D&D." my kids recognized, because they had played D&D with me when they were little, and so they recognized monsters like the Chimera and the Cockatrice and the Minotaur. Like they recognized all those like classic fantasy monsters from D&D, and they were finding those monsters in their My Little Pony shows, right? It seems like a no-brainer to make a rules light My Little Pony game for D&D.
Yeah, so you heard it here first, folks. 2028, My Little Pony universe coming.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? It's getting late. We did most of it. There was a couple of things we left on the cutting room floor, but oh boy, what a day in D&D news.
You can probably tell I'm actually as down as I've been on Wizards of the Coast for the last 3 years, right? Like, I was so fed up with you know, with Wizards of the Coast and the culture of D&D and, you know, the culture of our greater world influencing D&D. That was one of the reasons why I stopped making, you know, regular videos on my channel, is because I was sick of the noise. But you can tell I'm excited. Like I have no plans to play 5.5 after I finish my current campaign. I've said that on this show. I'm moving on to either Nimble or Vagabond.
I've been saying it for years. I'm not playing D&D anymore. Sorry.
I've already prepped my next campaign, so I know for sure I'm playing Vagabond in my next campaign. I've got Nimble. I want to play that too. So, and we took a long break from D&D and played Shadowdark. So, I don't see myself playing 5.5, but I'm excited for this new direction of Wizards of the Coast, and I hope they're successful, and I hope they do it well, because a healthy Wizards of the Coast is good for the hobby. I don't see myself buying these products unless my players come to me and they're like, I really want to play Dark Sun. I'll probably figure out a way to create Dark Sun for Vagabond or Nimble, because I'm just really tired of playing 5th edition, or at least DMing it. And so, like I said, I don't see myself buying most of these products or any of these products possibly, but I want Wizards of the Coast to be healthy. I want the brand of D&D to be healthy, and I hope they're able to accomplish their goal of making a D&D for everyone. You know, if they have Star Wars and World of Warcraft and Power Rangers and Transformers and G.I. Joe, and also Greyhawk and Dark Sun and Domains of Dread for Ravenloft style horror games, then that gives you a whole lot of options, a whole lot of entry points to get new players into D&D. Hey, you play Vampire the Masquerade? Check out this new version of D&D, these Domains of Dread. We can do horror in D&D better than we ever have been, because Ghostfire Games actually did a kick-ass job on D&D horror. That would be awesome to see, right? To be able to get your little kids into D&D via Power Rangers or G.I. Joe or Transformers, like, that would be great. To get your friends and neighbors or kids into D&D through Star Wars, fantastic, right? If they pull this off and they do this well, it could really be a big boon for the hobby. We've got a ton of gamers who've left 5e and left Wizards of the Coast products and are playing all these different indie games that are out right now, or playing Draw Steel, or playing Daggerheart. And that's great too, right? It's not an either or. It can be a both and, right? It can be a both and, where you have a healthy Wizards of the Coast bringing new players into the hobby, and then you have a healthy indie OSR, narrative play, solo play, a whole bunch of other RPGs out there that, are for a totally different audience. And those new gamers coming in through the Hasbro pipeline, the D&D pipeline, they play D&D for 5, 6, 8, 10 years, and then they're going to graduate to play other games, because that's what most of us have done, right? And that's good for the hobby.
Absolutely. There's more people not playing anything that we can get into the hobby. And I don't know if this is naive, because a lot of it is like brand loyalty, because it's been consistent over editions that are vastly different. But I have an inclination that as we get these like divergent settings that have divergent rule sets, as modular and small as those changes are, by like, oh no, when we play Dark Sun, it fundamentally works differently. You can't bring your cleric, you can't use these spells. When you use this spell, you have to decide what kind of cost you're paying. These minute rule changes into like consequential rule changes, I think intuitively makes it easier for you to get players to transition from D&D to another game because it supports a narrative structure in that genre better. It seems like, all right, you've already taken the one step from the baseline PHB to a refined, edited down, and bolted onto edition of Warcraft or whatever that first step is. You've already made the leap. And now, hey, this is just like that, only most of the time way easier. So I think that is actually another way this adds like vibrancy to the TTRPG space as a whole, even the indie scene. There's also a chance that you get that player at your table who was never going to run a Forgotten Realms module, who, you know, was obsessed with World of Warcraft 20 years ago. And like, maybe this is your chance to bring in new dungeon masters from players.
Absolutely. And another great question in the chat is Wizards of the Coast going to suck all the oxygen out of the room and gobble up all the great designers? I think there's a lot of aspiring game designers and indie game designers who, I hope it happens. I hope Wizards of the Coast, grabs up as many designers as they can to work on their products, because there's still a lot of us out here that would be thrilled to work on projects and work, and do more in the game design space, right? There's a lot of folks. I don't think we're limited on game designers. I think there's a lot of, just take the YouTube community alone. Like, look at Peter from Tales of Elsewhere. He's a great game designer. I would love to see him, take his game and be super successful with it, or get a contract to work for one of these third-party creators to do, a non-WotC project, right? He's, and that's just off the top of my head. Like, there's a ton of us out here, talking about game design, making our own products. Like, Ryan has his products out, and Jim has his stuff out, and like, I think there's plenty of space for new people to come on board, or, people who otherwise are kind of flirting with game design, like myself, who, if there was a spot to land and some project that I could really, dig my teeth into, yeah, it'd be awesome. So I'm not worried about that so much as I just want D&D to be healthy, like I said, and driving new players towards the hobby, so that we have more players, more game masters, because not everybody's going to love D&D, and they're going to, once they get started in the hobby, there's a good chance they're going to move on to other games, and that's good for all of us.
Yeah, well said. And I've rarely felt better about that. Like, we've been in this golden age for a while now, but man, we've been in a rebuilding era at the same time, and a lot of cool independent stuff coming out of that. And I think maybe the waves are not necessarily synced up. I think one is in front of the other. But yeah, just as Brad was saying, it's not zero sum.
Right. Yeah.
More people playing awesome stuff, the more awesome stuff there is to play, the better it is for all of us, and the better it is for you at your table, because that's what it comes down to a lot, unless you're trying to, make a living off of this stuff. These are all just more options to have more fun with your friends and your family at the table. So yeah, here's to a new era. 2027 is looking bright, at least over here. Don't look at anything else. All right, bye everybody. We love you.
Oh, yeah.